George Santos walked into the congressional hearing room with his usual swagger, his designer suit shimmering beneath the harsh overhead lights. Cameras followed his every move as he adjusted his crimson tie and flashed that familiar smirk. To most people in the room, this was supposed to be the day his career finally imploded. But Santos, ever the showman, had come prepared with what he claimed would be a twist ending. A manila folder clutched in his hand, allegedly containing evidence that would turn the tables on his accuser, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The atmosphere was electric, tense, expectant. The House Ethics Committee hearing had drawn national attention, and the rows behind the witness tables were packed with journalists, aides, and staffers whispering in low tones. Santos's name had become synonymous with scandal, and everyone knew this was the moment that could either end him or, by some miracle, allow him to wriggle free again. Only moments earlier, Crockett had delivered a brutal, methodical dissection of Santos's public life. She had laid out the lies, the fabricated resume, the questionable campaign finances, and the trail of deception that had followed him from his first campaign speech to his seat in Congress. Her closing words had left the room buzzing. "Mr. Santos isn't just a congressman with ethical issues," she had said, her tone crisp and controlled. "He's a con man who never belonged in this chamber to begin with." The crowd murmured, and cameras clicked in rapid bursts. But as the echoes of her statement faded, Santos appeared perfectly calm, almost smug. He leaned forward, tapped the microphone twice, and looked directly at her. "Congresswoman Crockett thinks she's backed me into a corner," he said confidently, his hand resting on the folder. "But what happens next will change everything you think you know about who really belongs in Congress." His words hung in the air, heavy and theatrical. His gaze met Crockett's from across the room, unflinching, almost daring her to flinch first. She didn't. Without saying a word, she opened her laptop and began typing. What Santos didn't realize was that Crockett had anticipated every move he was about to make. She knew he wouldn't come quietly. He never did. And while he had spent the night rehearsing his performance, federal agents were already waiting in position just outside the hearing room doors. Santos thought he was stepping into a dramatic showdown. He was actually walking into a carefully built trap. George Santos's entire political life had been built on illusion. He had lied about his education, his employment history, even his family's past. He claimed to have worked on Wall Street, to have attended elite universities, to be descended from Holocaust survivors. None of it was true. His campaign biography was a fantasy crafted to win votes and sympathy. But his lies weren't just a means to an end. They were the foundation of his identity. He had spent years perfecting the act, using charisma, confidence, and distraction to keep the truth buried. Whenever he was confronted, he doubled down, inventing new stories, new accusations, new enemies. Chaos wasn't just his defense, it was his strategy. Across the room, Jasmine Crockett sat quietly, her poise a striking contrast to Santos's restless bravado. A former civil rights attorney, she was known for her precision and her refusal to be intimidated. She had made a career out of exposing injustice and holding powerful people accountable, and she'd approached this investigation into Santos with the same intensity she once brought to her courtroom battles. In interviews, she had made her position clear. "This isn't about partisanship," she'd said. "It's about truth. Either facts still matter in Congress, or they don't." Her investigation had been exhaustive. She and the Ethics Committee had spent weeks gathering evidence, campaign records, financial disclosures, witness testimony, and she knew their case was airtight. But she also knew Santos's patterns. He never admitted wrongdoing. He always attacked, and that was exactly what she was counting on. Behind the scenes, the Department of Justice had been quietly working alongside the committee. Their investigation went far beyond the ethics violations. It reached into potential criminal conduct, including wire fraud, identity theft, and campaign finance manipulation. Federal agents had enough evidence to act, but they needed the timing to be perfect. Santos's arrogance would give them that. The plan was simple. Let him walk into the hearing convinced he was about to expose a scandal, then watch as he incriminated himself on live television. When the chairwoman gave him the floor, Santos stood and spoke with all the confidence of a man who believed he was about to reclaim control of his story. "Madam Chairwoman, I request time to present evidence that has been deliberately withheld from this committee," he announced, his voice echoing through the packed chamber. "You may proceed." "Mr. Santos," the chairwoman replied cautiously. Santos began passing out documents to the committee members. He stood tall, voice full of righteous indignation. "What you are holding," he declared, "is proof that Congresswoman Crockett has engaged in the very corruption she accuses me of. Financial irregularities, misreported donations, and coordination with dark money groups." The room filled with hushed voices as members flipped through the pages. On the surface, the documents looked convincing. Bank statements, emails, transaction logs, all with Crockett's name attached. "On March 15th, Santos said, stabbing his finger toward one of the pages, "Congresswoman Crockett received a $175,000 payment from an undisclosed donor. That transaction never appeared in her FEC filings." He held up another page triumphantly. "And here, evidence of her using campaign funds for personal luxury expenses. The hypocrisy is staggering." Reporters' phones lit up as they sent messages to their editors. The energy in the room shifted. This was exactly the chaos Santos thrived on. Confusion, speculation, scandal. Crockett remained motionless. Her fingers tapped quietly on her laptop keyboard. She waited. Santos wasn't done. He produced enlarged photographs and pointed dramatically to them. "While she was investigating me," he said, "she was meeting with political operatives who plotted harassment campaigns against me and other Republicans. This is corruption at the highest level." For nearly 20 minutes, Santos performed like a man born for the spotlight. He paced, gestured, raised his voice for emphasis. It was vintage Santos, the defiant outsider fighting back against a system he claimed was out to destroy him. When he finally finished, the room buzzed with tension and disbelief. The chairwoman turned to Crockett. "Congresswoman, you may respond." Crockett stood, her expression unreadable, and walked to the microphone. She connected her laptop to the projector, and a copy of the very same document Santos had just distributed appeared on the screen behind her. "What Mr. Santos has presented," she began, her tone calm but cutting, "is not evidence of corruption. It is evidence of forgery." The chatter in the room stopped instantly. "These documents are designed to look authentic," she continued. "The bank statements bear my name. The emails use my official signature block. But there's a small problem. The files themselves tell a different story." She clicked to the next slide, revealing rows of metadata. Every single one of these files was created between 2:17 and 4:43 a.m. this morning, on a computer registered to G. Santos. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Santos froze, his smirk faltering. Crockett went on. "These forgeries were generated using illegal AI software designed to fabricate financial records. Technology the FBI has already identified as part of multiple ongoing fraud cases." Santos leapt to his feet. "This is ridiculous. You're fabricating evidence to protect yourself." "Mr. Santos," the chairwoman said firmly, "you will remain seated." Crockett barely looked at him. "I anticipated that Mr. Santos might try something like this. That's why I asked the FBI's Digital Forensics Unit to be on standby to review any materials he submitted today." She clicked again, and an email appeared on the screen. Time-stamped just minutes earlier. "They have confirmed what I am showing you now. These are forgeries created within the last 24 hours. The air in the room grew heavy. Santos's confidence visibly drained as Crockett methodically dismantled his narrative. "Now," she said, her voice steady, "let's address his specific claims." She began reviewing the supposed evidence point by point, displaying certified bank records and official filings that completely contradicted Santos's allegations. Her presentation was calm, surgical, and devastating. Santos tried to interrupt, but each time, the chairwoman's gavel silenced him. By the time Crockett reached her final slide, the tension in the room was thick enough to feel. "And finally," she said, "these text messages, retrieved from the phone of one of Mr. Santos's aides, show clear intent to fabricate evidence for this hearing. The words on the screen made the room erupt in stunned murmurs. Santos's face went pale. The messages read, "Documents ready," convincing enough to create confusion for a few days. By the time they realize the news cycle will have moved on, use the secure server. Nothing traces back to me. Crockett's voice cut through the noise. These messages were sent from a device belonging to Mr. Santos's staff, to a number registered to Mr. Santos himself. The realization hit him like a wave. His carefully planned spectacle had just become a confession, and the doors at the back of the hearing room were beginning to open. The heavy wooden doors at the back of the hearing room swung open with a slow, deliberate creak. At first, only a few people noticed. Then, the faint shuffle of polished shoes echoed against the marble floor, and the murmurs in the chamber began to fade. Two men in dark suits stepped forward, their expressions grave. Behind them came two more, badges gleaming on their belts. George Santos turned halfway in his chair, confusion flashing across his face. The cameras zoomed in, reporters rising from their seats. "Mr. Santos," one of the agents said calmly, "please step away from the table." Santos blinked. "What is this? What's going on?" Crockett didn't move. She watched him, her eyes fixed, her expression unreadable. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Santos," she said, voice measured, "the Department of Justice has requested your immediate presence in connection with an ongoing criminal investigation." The room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The lead agent stepped forward, opening a small folder. "George Anthony Devil de Santos," he began, his tone steady. "You are under arrest for the fabrication of federal documents, obstruction of justice, wire fraud, and conspiracy to falsify congressional evidence." Gasps rippled through the audience. The reporters erupted into a frenzy of camera flashes and whispered updates. Santos's face drained of color. "This is outrageous," he shouted, his voice cracking as he backed away from the table. "You can't do this in the middle of a hearing. This is a setup." Crockett remained seated, her hands clasped together in front of her. "Mr. Santos," she said quietly, "you've been setting yourself up for this moment since the day you walked into Congress. Don't talk to me like that," he snapped. "You're corrupt. You're—" The agent interrupted, reading from the warrant. "You have the right to remain silent." Santos's words faltered as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The metallic sound echoed across the hearing room, sharp, final, undeniable. For a moment, no one spoke. The cameras captured every second. The frozen faces of committee members, the stunned silence from the press gallery, and Santos's defiant, trembling glare as agents led him from the table. Outside the chamber, the sound of shouting reporters filled the hallway. Questions flew through the air about the charges, the investigation, the downfall of one of Congress's most infamous figures. Back inside, Crockett exhaled slowly and closed her laptop. The tension that had filled the room for weeks began to dissipate, replaced by something quieter, heavier, the realization that it was finally over. The chairwoman rapped the gavel once. "This committee stands in recess." But the story didn't end there. Within hours, the footage of Santos's arrest was everywhere. News outlets replayed it on a loop, his confident smirk dissolving into panic the moment the handcuffs locked, the stunned expressions of those watching. Social media exploded with reactions. Hashtags trended worldwide. Santos arrested. Crockett exposed him. Justice in real time. In the days that followed, more details emerged. The Department of Justice released an official statement confirming that the arrest was the result of a coordinated operation between federal investigators and the House Ethics Committee. The forged documents Santos had presented were traced directly back to a laptop seized from his office. The metadata, the emails, the texts, every piece of his elaborate scheme had led straight back to him. Behind the scenes, prosecutors prepared a sweeping case. They had enough evidence to prove a pattern of deception stretching back years. The fake campaign donors, the phantom businesses, the offshore transfers. All of it painted a picture of a man who had built his career on lies and manipulation. Jasmine Crockett became an unexpected symbol of accountability. News anchors praised her composure under pressure, her meticulous preparation, her ability to expose the truth in real time. Interviewers tried to capture the moment from her perspective, but she remained measured, almost restrained. "I wasn't trying to make a moment," she said in one interview. "I was trying to make sure the truth was undeniable, no matter who was watching." For the people who had followed the Santos saga from the beginning, it felt like the final chapter in a long and chaotic story. But for Crockett, it was never about spectacle. It was about restoring something far more important: the idea that truth still has a place in public life. Weeks later, as Santos sat in a federal holding cell awaiting trial, the footage of his last day in Congress continued to circulate online. His once carefully crafted image, the confident politician, the charming outsider, had crumbled into dust. Meanwhile, Crockett returned to work as if nothing had changed. When asked how it felt to have played such a pivotal role in one of the most dramatic congressional moments in recent memory, she smiled faintly. "I didn't destroy him," she said. "He did that all by himself. I just turned on the lights." Outside, the Capitol dome glowed against the night sky. Calm, still, unshaken. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered in the marble halls. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of Washington, people who thought they could get away with the same kind of deceit began to think twice. Justice had spoken, not through spectacle, but through truth, precision, and patience. And Jasmine Crockett had proven once again that sometimes the most devastating weapon in politics isn't power or noise. It's facts.